When my tears turn to laughter, that child long ago, my soul starts to linger. It's home, I know. If you catch me daydreaming now and forever, thoughts are carrying me along to that place we call home. Down that long road, throughout life we roam. Wherever I go.
Along the ancient water route to the heartland of the continent, this city in southeastern Ontario has always had its fortunes tied to the St. Lawrence River. One writer described guests as electrified, bedazzled, when Thomas Edison showed off his new lighting system here at the height of the Industrial Revolution. It was the first of its kind in the country. And that gives us some idea of the economic importance of this city, even then. We're in for a learning experience here as we unfold the story of the city of Cornwall.
Right here from to where that monument was water. There was a canal. That's called Water Street along there because where Water Street starts, there was the bank of the canal, and boats would go up and down. And they dug that about 150 years ago, and what we're going to do today is go on a big swim. About a 2-mile swim on the old canal, and...
A typical outing for museum curator Ian Bowring. A typical day for Arve Erlandsen, the Norwegian captain of the Thor 1. 4 weeks out from South Africa, Cornwall Harbour is the next stop on his scheduled run. A prevailing influence, the river remains a common denominator. Dennis Carter Edwards.
The history of Cornwall revolves around the river, the St. Lawrence River. It was a main artery for the First Nations who traveled up and down the St. Lawrence to camps and hunting grounds interior. It became the lifeline for the Loyalists, the first European settlers, to come to this area. It brought them supplies and transport from Montreal. It provided both a lifeline and a connection to headquarters further up the river. The river provided transportation for some of the supplies coming out.
We can put the anchor here and we'll try fishing here.
The river is part of painter Tamia Dole. She a part of it.
It's very relaxing. I guess it's where I'm the happiest. And that influences me, and then I try and put into my paintings that passion, I guess, for the river and the people that are enjoying it and working on it and the scenery. I'm a river rat, and I love the river and the fishing and the people.
The river connects people. Before the day is over, the 165-meter, 15,000-ton Thor 1 will offload part of her cargo, consigned to a Cornwall factory. Cornwall's history is shaped by the river, is written into its cityscape. Here, cathedrals of religion and industry stand side by side. On the Canada-U.S. border, today's Cornwall is a manufacturing, administration, and judicial center for the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry. Its population of 47,000 is about 22% Francophone. Some of the industries of now, like pulp and paper, carry over from decades past. Some offer contrast and new influences. Others are long-standing. The textile industry has provided employment here for generations, continuing as one of the economic building blocks of the city today. In Cornwall's story, a sport bonds the city to Akwesasne, its neighbor on Cornwall Island. Frank Benedict.
Basically, the game of lacrosse is an original traditional game among the Iroquois nations or tribes. In our local area here, our native people are very involved in the promotion and development of the game.
Well, of course, the people here first were the natives, and they came up here from the Mohawk Valley to go fishing every summer. The French-Canadian fur traders came past here every year to go fur trapping. Well, in 1784, the United Empire Loyalists came. They left New York State because they lost the war. And they actually landed here on June 6, 1784, with their families, their pets, and all their possessions, right along this ridge. So where we're standing right now is approximately where Cornwall was founded. And I know that because somebody on the first day, June 6th, they made a painting. And if you compare this, it looks very, very much like the painting of the first day. Cornwall was set out by the British Army, and the British Army set it out as a square mile. The British were looking back to ancient Rome when they took that example. The ancient Romans, when they moved in somewhere, they set it up as a square mile. They're military forts, so that you could see actually a mile from one point to the other watchtower, to the other watchtower, to the other. Well, the British, in their way of thinking at that time, having more or less won all the wars they were fighting throughout the 18th century, thought they were the inheritors of the Roman Empire. And it was just natural for them, at least, to outline the town as the ancient Romans would have. They set out a town which was actually a series of farms. And if you drive through the streets today, you'll see nice wide streets interspersed with little lanes.
The community that began as New Johnstown was in for change. By the beginning of the 1800s, the potential of the river offered new avenues.
Probably its greatest impact was after the War of 1812, as commerce and economic development really took off. The merchants in the Cornwall area saw tremendous opportunities to supply the growing market in Montreal, but to expand the commerce, they needed good transport for supplies moving through the river. And the rapids just upriver from Cornwall, the Long Sault Rapids, a majestic sight as the surf pounded over the rocks, very picturesque for the viewer to behold, but a real horror for captains trying to run the rapids with their steamers.
By following a canal building trend started half a century earlier, they bypassed the rapids, providing a critical shipping link. The sailing of the Highlander in 1842, the first to navigate Cornwall's new main street, marked the beginnings of a decisive era.
The canal construction was really the first major capital project that the government of Upper Canada undertook. And it made a tremendous impact on Cornwall, not only in terms of the actual construction of the canal, but they imported a large body of Irish navvies to work in the canals.
With the Irish come a totally new ethnic group, come a totally new religion. Basically, it's a Protestant town until the 1830s. With the coming of the Irish, it becomes half and half Catholic and Protestant, and this gives the town a completely new complexion. Well, there's been altogether 3 bridges across the river. This bridge was necessary because right where we are now, the canal was a 2-lane canal. On the one side was the town, and over on this side we had a factory, the Stormont Mill, and they actually made blue jeans. So how do the boats get across and how do people get across? Well, they get across on a swing bridge. And right what we're sitting on is the old bridge abutment. And the bridge used to swing. When people had to get across, it'd go that way. When boats had to come, it would go this way. Simple as that.
And over on this side, you can see the Canada Cotton Mill, which was one of the plants that was built using the water from the canal. And then at the
Karen Carter Edwards also brings heritage into the learning environment.
in the 1880s.
The impact of the canal rang out as the town took off. The harnessing of the St. Lawrence meant Cornwall would soon rank among the elite of manufacturing centers.
There was about an 18-foot drop between the head of the canal and the lower end. This provided a tremendous reserve of water power that could be used to turn turbines, which in turn could turn the looms and the equipment in the textile mills. To make the mills efficient, of course, you needed employees, lots of them working in the mills, dedicated to the operation and the care and feeding of those looms that produced the products that they sold. So you had a large-scale working force, primarily French-Canadian, who came and settled in Cornwall. Well, they needed a place to stay. They needed some basic social services. And so in the early years, the mill owners provided not only a place for them to work, but provided them with a place to live.
This was part of the township, so there were no zoning laws about how far houses had to be apart and how big lots had to be. So they're a lot closer together here. And sometimes you'll find a second house sort of at the back of a driveway, but tucked in behind.
Speaking with individuals who remember stories from their parents and their grandparents from the 1880s and the 1890s, where their life was set by the regiment of the bell and the whistle from the mill. They would get up in the morning in their little room in the boarding house, a step or two away from the mill, quick breakfast and off to the mill for 10, 12 hours, 6.5 days a week. When their day was done, they would cross that little walkway into their house and prepare for the next day. It was a hard life.
The Canadian Cotton Manufacturing Company was one of the leaders in innovation. The factory was the first in Canada to adopt electric lights, installed by Thomas Edison in the 1880s. But progress held a double-edged sword.
And the introduction of a good quality, inexpensive lighting system would mean that the mills could operate more efficiently, and potentially in those dark winter nights, they could operate much longer. And so the technology provided, again, opportunities for economic advancement, but there was also a downside in that it could extend the working day beyond a regular shift in the wintertime.
The era of the factory whistle and the Cornwall Canal would reign for a century. Yet when it ended, the community's ties to the river held fast. The city of Cornwall is tied to New York State by the Seaway International Bridge. The building of the St. Lawrence Seaway and hydro generating station in the 1950s ended the Cornwall Canal. Ships traveling the system today use the Snell Lock in U.S. waters. Begatawa, lacrosse. Originating among native tribes of the St. Lawrence Valley, the game is the oldest organized sport in North America. By 1900, it was unofficially recognized as Canada's national game. The traditional wooden stick, still a first choice for many, is made at Akwesasne.
The Mohawks, the Mohawk Nation themselves actually were the prime producers of the, or manufacturers of the stick itself. We still use the same type of material, which is the frames are made out of hickory, and the material used in finishing the frame is we still use the traditional rawhide, which is made out of cowhide, and we use different types of leathers and different types of nylon for the weaving.
I don't think so. Got him.
Big bird.
Bird.
Big bird.
Now, you see, that's the kind we'd like to get.
Tamia's World. Accompanied by partner Tubby Legault, Cornwall is for Tamia the St. Lawrence. Its seasons, its people.
I can see where I've been in the summertime, and there they are in the winter still trying to catch a fish. To me, on that expanse of sort of no life, of the snow and the frozen, you know, the fish are still under there, and they're active again out there on the ice. My whole life was spent on the river, and funnily enough, it was my grandmother that was the fisherman. The river itself is very beautiful to me, and I just love being out there. The colors always seem vibrant to me, and the colors of the water and the colors of the boats and the people, and you know, the oranges and greens and blues, and the sky. The sky changes a lot. I don't care if I catch anything or not. I just love the activity, the big ships, the freighters and the ocean liners, and just the general atmosphere. It's where I'm most relaxed. The people fascinate me. I just like to hear them talk. They're not secretive about, you know, where the fish are. Well, some are, I guess, but they're pretty good, you know. To catch any, where, oh, down by the shovel or on the flats or dry behind a certain island. To me, they're real people, I guess. I just love them. Good fishermen know when something is coming. And a lot of times I'm sort of silly, you know, well, can't we just stay a little longer? No, storm is coming.
Since the era of the Canadian Cotton Manufacturing Company, the evolution of Cornwall has seen many changes, new industries, and the modernization of others. Through the decades, important reminders have remained, reminders of the community's heritage. In the city, landmarks are studied and documented, their appreciation made a part of awareness for the generations of today. The belief is that integral to nurturing a sense of place is the embracing of what has made Cornwall, looking back.
This one, you can take a look at the roof. You can see that there are a number of added elements to it. Again, the basement is a sign of an older house, but there's been a lot of restoration work on this particular home. Now, in the homes on the far side, when we were looking at slides at the school, you'll remember the particular one on the corner. This house has some elements of an Italianate style with the particular square tower in it, a very decorative roof line, and there's a lot of treatment along the windows, which shows the particular age and the elegance of this house as contrasted with the ones we looked down at Lorneville.
The Globe and Mail sent down a reporter in the early 1890s to report on this new industrial economy that was emerging in Cornwall, and titled his article, "Cornwall Proudly Claimed as the Factory Town," and wrote about the engines of economic activity that were churning away at full speed here in Cornwall. Its industrial basis was important for a lot of its economic growth. And it has left us an important legacy today. We have a number of the buildings that survive as landscapes, as reminders, in some ways kind of a sad reminder. Those large plants that to some extent no longer are carrying that kind of economic opportunity and the kind of optimism. But nevertheless, an important reminder of the heyday of industrial activity.
Weird.
this is the monument to the canal.
For Ian Bowring, knowing one's city is history brought to life.
The bell that was on the cotton factory that's down in the East End.
And I ask the children in schools, what's history? And of course they talk about the famous people. And then I say, yes, that's right, but the famous people wouldn't be there if you're not there. And we weren't there, and your grandparents weren't there, and the people who dug the canal weren't there. History's all of us. One of the most popular programs the museum has is a walk. I show them what's behind the aluminum-sided buildings. I show them what that thing in the ground is. I tell them the names of the streets. I tell them, you know, who Amelia was, who Cumberland was, and of course they begin to ask questions.
This is the two-lane part of the canal where boats could go upstream and downstream. Of course, the locks were used because you couldn't very easily lift a boat. A boat can't lift itself. It has to be lifted with the water. The boat would sail in, the water would come in, lift it up, and it would sail out and vice versa on the other side.
Well, you know, when you're walking with a number of students and you're heading off to a picnic, and that's how we usually end it, you see stones, you see a river, or you see a canal. Well, I want them to get some idea how wide the canal is. It was 45 feet, so we have a stone throwing contest. And those that get across the canal would have been able to throw a stone across a boat because the boats couldn't be any wider than 45 feet.
Cornwall. Military establishment, canal town, industrial city, the place of today. Throughout its 2 centuries, quiet in the strength of the river, Cornwall has endured, adjusted to change, charged for what lies ahead. Remembering what has been, it remembers with appreciation, for history is all of us.
Whenever I do that place, I know it'll always be home.